Hey friends, and welcome back to A Simple Truth. Continuing through Numbers, we are at chapters 16 and 17. Now, what we talked about yesterday was God passing judgment on the Israelites for essentially not taking a hold of what he had for them. And they will, eventually. They have some more desert time ahead of them as they looked at the Canaanites and said, that's too much for us. We essentially don't trust God enough to give us what he has promised. So the current living Israelites will not get to experience that. Their children will, but they won't. So we're going to take a look at that. And then also today in 16, we're going to be looking at rebellion. So there's some rebellion in the camp. And we have also Aaron's rod budding. And we'll talk about why that's kind of crazy as well. But that's where we'll see it, is chapters 16 and 17. So chapter 16. Now Korah, the son of Azar, the son of Kohath, the son of Levi, with Dathan and Abiram, the sons of Elab, and on the son of Peleth, the sons of Reuben, took men, and they rose up before Moses with some of the children of Israel, 250 leaders of the congregation, representatives of the congregation, men of renown. They gathered together against Moses and Aaron, and said to them, "You take too much upon yourselves, for all the congregation is holy, every one of them, and the Lord is among them. Why then do you exalt yourselves above the assembly of the Lord?" So when Moses heard it, he fell on his face, and he spoke to Korah and all his company, saying, "Tomorrow morning the Lord will show who he is and who is holy, and will cause him to come near him. That one whom he chooses, he will cause to come near to him. Do this, take censers, Korah and all your company, put fire in them and put incense in them before the Lord tomorrow. And it shall be that the man whom the Lord chooses is the Holy One. You take too much upon yourselves, you sons of Levi." Then Moses said to Korah, "Hear now, you sons of Levi. Is it a small thing to you that the God of Israel has separated you from the congregation of Israel to bring you near to himself, to do the work of the tabernacle of the Lord, and to stand before the congregation to serve them? And that he has brought you near to himself, you and all your brethren, the sons of Levi with you, and are there seeking the priesthood also? Therefore, you and all your company are gathered together against the Lord. And what is Aaron that you complain against him?" And Moses sent to Dathan and Abiram, the sons of Elab, but they said, "We will not come up. Is it a small thing that you have brought us up out of a land flowing with milk and honey to kill us in the wilderness, that you should keep acting like a prince over us? Moreover, you have not brought us into a land flowing with milk and honey, nor given us inheritance of fields and vineyards. Will you put out the eyes of these men? We will not come up." Then Moses was very angry and said to the Lord, "Do not respect their offering. I have not taken one donkey from them, nor have I hurt one of them." And Moses said to Korah, "Tomorrow you and your company will be present before the Lord, you and they, as well as Aaron. Let each take his censer and put incense in it, and each of you bring his censer before the Lord, 250 censers, both you and Aaron, each with his censer." So every man took his censer, put the fire in it, and laid incense on it, and stood at the door of the tabernacle of meeting with Moses and Aaron. And Korah gathered his congregation against them at the door of the tabernacle of meeting. Then the glory of the Lord appeared to all the congregation. And the Lord spoke to Moses and Aaron, saying, "Separate yourselves from among this congregation, that I may consume them in a moment." Then they fell on their faces and said, "O God, the God of the spirits of all flesh, shall one man sin and you be angry with all the congregation?" So the Lord spoke to Moses, saying, "Speak to the congregation, saying, Get away from the tents of Korah, Dathan, and Abiram." Then Moses rose and went to Dathan and Abiram, and the elders of Israel followed him. And he spoke to the congregation, saying, "Depart now from the tents of these wicked men, touch nothing of theirs, lest you be consumed in all their sins." So they got away from around the tents of Korah, Dathan, and Abiram. And Dathan and Abiram came out and stood at the door of their tents with their wives, their sons, and their little children. And Moses said, "By this you shall know that the Lord has sent me to do all these works. For I have not done any of them of my own will. If these men die naturally, like all men, or if they are visited by a common fate of all men, then the Lord has not sent me. But if the Lord creates a new thing, and the earth opens its mouth and swallows them with all that belongs to them, and they go down alive into the pit. Then you will understand that these men have rejected the Lord. Now it came to pass, as he finished speaking all these words, that the ground split apart under them, and the earth opened its mouth and swallowed them up, with their households and all their men, with Korah, with all their goods. So they and all those with them went down alive into the pit. The earth closed over them, and they perished from among the assembly. When all Israel who were around them fled at their cry, for they also said, lest the earth swallow us up also. And a fire came out from the Lord and consumed 250 men who were offering incense. Then the Lord spoke to Moses, saying, Tell Eleazar, the son of Aaron the priest, to pick up the censers out of the blaze, for they are holy, and scatter the fire some distance away. The censers of these men who sinned against their own souls, let them be made into hammered plates as a covering for the altar, because they presented them before the Lord. Therefore they are holy, and they shall be assigned to the children of Israel. So Eleazar the priest took the bronze censers which those who were burned up had presented, and they were hammered out as a covering on the altar, to be a memorial to the children of Israel, that no outsider who is not a descendant of Aaron should come near to offer incense before the Lord, that he might not become like Korah and his companions, just as the Lord had said to him through Moses. On the next day, all the congregation of the children of Israel complained against Moses and Aaron, saying, You have killed the people of the Lord. Now it happened, when the congregation had gathered against Moses and Aaron, that they turned towards the tabernacle of meeting, and suddenly the cloud covered it, and the glory of the Lord appeared. Then Moses and Aaron came before the tabernacle of meeting, and the Lord spoke to Moses, saying, Get away from among this congregation, that I may consume them in a moment. And they fell on their faces. So Moses and Aaron took a censer and put fire in it from the altar and put incense on it. And take it quickly from the congregation and make atonement for them. For the wrath has gone out from the Lord. The plague has begun. And Aaron took it as Moses had commanded and ran into the midst of the assembly. And already the plague had begun among the people. So he put incense and made atonement for the people. And he stood between the dead and the living. So the plague was stopped. Now, those who died in the plague were 14,700, besides those who had died in the Korah incident. So Aaron returned to Moses at the door of the tabernacle of meeting, for the plague had stopped. Chapter 17. And the Lord spoke to Moses, saying, Speak to the children of Israel, and get from them a rod from each of his father's house, and all their leaders according to their father's houses, 12 rods. Write each man's name on his rod, and you shall write Aaron's name on the rod for Levi. 4, there shall be one rod for the head of each father's house. Then you shall place them in the tabernacle of meeting before the testimony, where I will meet with you. And it shall be that the rod of the man whom I choose will blossom. Thus I will rid myself of the complaints of the children of Israel, which they make against you. So Moses spoke to the children of Israel and each of their leaders, and gave him a rod apiece, for each leader according to the father's house, 12 rods, and the rod of Aaron's was among their rods. And Moses placed the rods before the Lord in the tabernacle of witness. Now it came to pass on the next day that Moses went into the tabernacle to witness, and behold, the rod of Aaron of the house of Levi had sprouted and put forth buds, and had produced blossoms and yielded ripe almonds. Then Moses brought out all the rods before the Lord to the children of Israel, and they looked, and each man took his rod. And the Lord said to Moses, Bring Aaron's rod back before the testimony, to be kept as a sign against the rebels, that you may put their complaints away from me, lest they die. Thus did Moses, just as the Lord had commanded him, so he did. So the children of Israel spoke to Moses, saying, Surely we die, we perish, we all perish. Whoever comes near the tabernacle of the Lord must die. Shall we all utterly die? Crazy stuff. And I love that one. I forget that story more often than I should. And I think of it, when I read it, I always think of that as, oh, it's this small sign, the budding of Aaron's rod. And I think it gets overshadowed by the opening of the earth for the Korah incident, as it says, and the swallowing of this men and their families and all their belongings. All these men who were not obeying, not willing to obey, and stirring dissension up among the Israelite people. That overshadows the budding blossom story. And I think for my purposes and for my part, that's that's a shame, because I tend to think of the blossoming rod as such a small thing. But then I have to remember what was done and who did it. So what was done? Well, there's a dead rod that essentially comes to life, and it gives not only blossoms and buds, but also almonds. So there are kind of two things that are happening here. Is number one, God is taking a rod, a dead, lifeless stick, and he's bringing life into it. And then number two, I had to look this up because I didn't know anything about almonds. He is transcending time in a moment, that these almonds, which apparently take anywhere from 3 to 5 years for an almond tree to produce almonds, good, viable, ripe almonds. And this is done overnight. And that's the God that we worship. That's the God that that we are subject to. And I think Korah and his men and the Israelites, myself as well, have some of that in common, that we can forget that some of these things become trivial, when in reality they transcend anything that we're able to do. I mean, even thousands of years later, we can't produce almonds overnight. If we could, yeah, that would be absolutely amazing. We can't bring things that have been completely dead for who knows how long for that rod and spring new life into it without trying to implant a seed or something. This is the God that we worship. And I think that's definitely something that bears remembering. Anyway, as always, thanks so much for joining. Hope you have a great rest of your day. And I'll talk to you tomorrow.